Thanks for inviting us on,
Hey,
TY.
anytime. And I mean that literally. So in the future, if y'all want to come back, tell us more, as things change, then I think that'd be really fun. So, Chris, how you been, man? Anything new going
Can't
on in your life?
complain. Amber's pregnant, so there's that. We're having a
Yes.
baby. She's officially 9 weeks. Um, so I got about 7 months to do anything fun before my life changes significantly. But excited, nervous, excited.
Man, me
But yeah,
too.
that's the big thing.
Excited for you. That's
Thanks, man.
awesome, man.
Appreciate that.
Congrats. You're glowing. You're not even pregnant, but you're glowing.
I appreciate that. I'm glowing for two.
All right. Well, yeah. So I think it'd be good to introduce you guys. Other than Chris, big news. Sorry to put you on the spot like that.
No, it's all
But
good, man.
so Craig, you want to tell us a little bit, and then Chris afterwards about how you got into Bitcoin or your background in general.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I'm not pregnant, so Chris has that on me for sure. Um, I mean, a little bit about me. I am in sales for a oil and gas, renewable energy construction company, and for fun, I play a whole lot of racquetball. So I was doing that today, and I mean, you work, racquetball, and kind of crypto are like the three things I spend my most time on. So that's just more of like a general introduction about me. But I don't know if you want us to go straight into introduction, how we got into Bitcoin or not, or if
Well, we pause there. Switch to Chris. Chris, background on you.
Yeah. So I run a software engineering team in New Orleans. We mainly create apps and cloud for enterprise applications, mainly involving smart home technology. Um, so I kind of started, as a front end software engineer building websites and that sort of thing. And that's kind of when I started to get interested in crypto because, I have a technical background and that sort of thing interested me. Um, so yeah, that's kind of where I started. You want me to go into where I got started with crypto?
Yes, please.
Okay. So it was probably 2014, I imagine. I was still in college. I was an intern at a top 5 engineering company in the US. And actually, one of my coworkers was mining Dogecoin. And I remember like going out to some Mediterranean restaurant and having this conversation with him. And once you meet people who are excited about crypto, it's like it's all they ever freaking talk about. It's like CrossFit, but for currency.
Or intermittent
Uh,
fasting, right?
exactly. So I just remember like yeah, I'm about that too. I just remember going out to this restaurant with him, and it's literally that's all we talked about. And he was very excited about it, and he was willing to sit me down and just explain the whole thing. He was like, listen, man, like we can get you set up. It's not that hard. You just need to, there's a little bit of overhead. You're going to buy some hardware. You're going to run these algorithms, whatever, and start mining, and you're just making money. And he told me at the time he was making, I think, something like an extra 20,000 a year on Dogecoin. And I was like, that's pretty cool. But I was an intern. I was just worried about keeping my job at the time. It was like my first real experience out of college doing anything serious. So I wasn't that interested in really doing anything else, to be honest with you. And if you look at Dogecoin, you just see the cute little puppy face. Like you don't take it seriously. No one takes it seriously. I didn't take it seriously. And that is one of my biggest regrets because I think it was a thousandth of a penny at the time, and it's 5 cents now. And so I can't imagine. I don't know what that dude is doing now, but he's sitting pretty if he sat on some of that Dogecoin. But we all have one of those stories where we could have gotten in earlier and we should have, but we didn't. So I'm sure each of you have your own.
Yeah, that's probably right. But the Dogecoin we'll get into more later, I'm sure. But that's not as, I guess, foundational as Bitcoin and Ethereum and some of the bigger coins. So we'll definitely talk about the pros and cons of all of that. But so Craig, what piqued your interest originally? How'd you get involved in all this?
I was trying to think about this earlier, and actually what Chris was saying, I would probably put in terms of talkability, cryptocurrency being just ahead of CrossFit, but behind being from New York and being vegan. So I think that's
fair. Yeah, it's a good scale. Yeah,
I think that's probably where it would go. But I don't remember how. I know when. It was at the end of 2012, and I think I was just trolling Reddit, and it was probably one of the forums, and I'm like, oh, what's Bitcoin? Reading a little bit about it, and I think the price had just gone from like high teens or mid 20s and had just made its jump to like 100-ish. It had just like broken 100 or something like that. It was a big, a milestone, and then it corrected back down. So I'm like, okay, how can I do this? Because I was my first year and a half into working for a company in Houston, and the process was not easy. There was no Coinbase at the time, right? So it wasn't log in, click, give your visa, and you're good to go. So I went to just like most people at the time, there's an exchange that we will be talking about here in a second called Mt. Gox, run by a man called Mark Karpels or Karpels. I'm not really sure how you say it, but Mt. Gox stood for Magic the Gathering Online Exchange, and it was before it converted into like a Bitcoin exchange. It was exclusively used for trading Magic the Gathering cards. So, but it was based in Japan, so I got the info. I took $500 down to my local Chase because I'd never wired money before, and I'm like, look, here are these instructions. I got $500. Can you facilitate this? And the guy's like, what's Bitcoin? And I'm just like, I don't even know. Can you just do this, please? And it ended up working. It took about 2 weeks, but the exchange, the Japanese bank, I think it was Mizuho Bank, if I remember right, but they got the money and then they sent it to Mt. Gox and they bought Bitcoin.
Wow. Yeah. Who would have thought Magic, the game, the card game, really gets people involved? Well, I don't know. I guess people aren't too surprised by anything these days, but all right. Wild ride. Yeah. I got involved through Chris. Actually, Chris was my friend that was the one that would talk.
I was the crypto guy.
You were the crypto guy for sure. And then Craig, you were my brother's crypto guy. So I just figure, hey, it's about time that we put these two guys together.
And, hey, let's get your dealer and we'll get my dealer and put them on.
We'll deal together.
Yeah. No, so let's see. So we got your intro, your background a little bit. What about cryptos? Like, how did we get here, and how, like, now it's so relevant? What was it? 2 years ago, it had its first giant boom peak, something like 2 or 3 years ago, and
up to 20,000. Yep.
Yeah, it got up to 20,000. Right now, it's between 40,000 and 50,000. So how did it get to this place of such relevance?
Who are you asking?
Yeah, I will ask Craig.
All right. Wait, Chris or Craig?
Yeah, Chris or Craig.
Maybe you should call me Buddy.
Yeah, that's true. Buddy, take it away.
All right, taking it away. So yeah, I mean, there were a lot of notable events in crypto's history, but mainly revolving around Bitcoin. Obviously, the one and only, the original. I guess it all started in 2008, where an individual or group going by the moniker of Satoshi Nakamoto created it. It went online for the first time January, I think 3rd, 2009, and Satoshi Nakamoto disappeared. He's gone. Nobody ever really heard from him again. And then probably the next most notable experience is going to be 10,000 Bitcoin for 2 Papa John's pizzas in 2010 is known as probably the first public transaction with Bitcoin, and 10,000 Bitcoin. So that's about $500 million in today's Bitcoin dollars.
For two pizzas?
For two Papa John's pizzas.
Were they one topping or?
I don't know, but the most important pizzas of all time, that's for sure. And then also in 2010, you had the first major Bitcoin exchange, as Craig touched on, Mt. Gox, which was first a Magic the Gathering trading site. Then 2011, you have the Silk Road. And the Silk Road, I mean, just like technology, that kind of needs porn. Most technologies need something to kind of get them started up, to get that fire started. And the Silk Road was kind of that for Bitcoin, for cryptocurrencies, because
what was Silk Road? Sorry, what's that?
The Silk Road was an online black market whose primary currency was Bitcoin. And you could buy anything. I mean, you could buy, and it expanded. I think it was up for about 2 to 3 years total. And it went from just being able to buy pot and different types of drugs to eventually being able to hire assassins and child trafficking. It eventually, it was basically ran by this guy, Ross Ulbricht, who's AKA Dread Pirate Roberts, by the way, was his moniker. And he was very libertarian, and he just basically built this site and said, do whatever you want, sell, trade, whatever you want. Bitcoin is the primary currency. And I think that ran for about 2 years, and they found him at a coffee shop somewhere in the US, and he's serving about 5 life sentences right now. And then you have, of course, in 2014, Mt. Gox gets hacked. And I think something like 750,000 Bitcoin were stolen from Mt. Gox, and the website just shut down. They didn't know how to deal with it. That's about $37 billion in today's money. And it was about 5% of the total Bitcoin at the time. So pretty crazy when you think about it that way. And then 2017 is probably another major event. And this one's a little bit, I may have to go into detail on this one later, but SegWit and the first notable Bitcoin hard fork. And that's how we got Bitcoin Cash. And that's a battle that actually still rages on today. But that's a little bit more technical. I'll reel that back a little bit. But I think, you have those 5 or 6 notable events, and it just kept gaining traction, like anything. It's the snowball effect, especially with the Silk Road and Mt. Gox, even though as horrible of a situation as that was. And, a lot of people lost a whole lot of money, but that notoriety that it got kind of still brought it to the forefront and still got a lot of attention. And it wouldn't be where it is now without it.
Not gonna lie, I'm a little lost.
On which part?
You threw out a lot of different terms that I was familiar with.
Okay.
So breaking it down, and maybe this could be kind of our strengths, right? It's like Chris, computer programmer, is able to bring it to such detail. Maybe Craig, you could bring us to a more general sense of maybe something along the lines of Natashi something Moto.
Satoshi Nakamoto.
That guy Satoshi, he created it, and it might not be he, it might be a group of people. It's kind of mysterious. We don't really know.
Right.
And then, so he created it back then, and then it was used for popularity on the dark market, the black market, dark web, where that's kind of a looming personality that people like to point to, not personality, but trait. Is like, oh, Bitcoin's bad because they use it in dark places. But
sure, yeah.
But so we went from Bitcoin back then, where it was only used there, primarily used there, and then can you bring us back up to speed, Craig, or your 2 cents in there?
Well, yeah, I want to go just a little bit maybe before that. So why Bitcoin? Because if you go back and what made him generate the white paper, which is just, the scientific paper that, explains the reasoning, the process, the justification. And it was largely, they have been playing around with it's this group of cryptographers, right? So you could say names like Satoshi Nakamoto or Craig Wright, or Halfpenny, and it's like this. It's a pretty small circle because it's such a specialized group of people that have been working on this since like the 90s, right? But the tech just hadn't really been there, right? Because you can't really have a global decentralized settlement network when you're running 56K dial up, at a home, right? So you really needed the internet to get to the point where it was, in the 2000s to allow for this. But it was the 2008 housing crash, right? Which was the housing bubble. It's and all the drama, the political issues, where you had these suspect banks. I don't want to get too much into the who's and what's, but it was obvious that you have this giant centralized system of money that is being controlled by people who do not have the public's best interest, right? So how do we get away from those types of huge crashes happening again in the future, right? Therefore, Bitcoin.
So you're saying that's when Bitcoin was created, is right after the crash, and probably because of that crash?
Yeah, and then there were some Bitcoin, pre-Bitcoin, projects before that, but that was the genesis of Bitcoin itself.
Mm-hmm. And actually, this is kind of an interesting little tidbit, but the first ever Bitcoin transaction that happened had a note attached to it, and it's still in the blockchain today because it all is, obviously. And it said, let's see, the Times, January 3rd, 2009, Chancellor on brink of second bailout for banks. So like, basically, I mean, that was Satoshi Nakamoto saying like, we need this because our system is corrupt. And so Bitcoin, I think, was actually a reaction in some sense to what was going on, the 2008 global financial crisis, and trying to create a system that actually had some type of accountability and lack of control from several corrupt major parties.
Wow, I didn't know that. I mean, I knew of its relevance today and how it's in one way or another an alternative currency. And today the crash or the virus has a crash looming. Ever since the beginning of the virus and the lockdowns, we had a huge dip and crash in the stock market. Not as big as the depression back in the 30s or even the 2009. I don't think it was that big yet, but it is something that everyone's looking to now and keeping our eyes on. Bitcoin is getting more. It has its second boom right now, like we mentioned earlier. Its first boom a couple of years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, was up to 20,000, and now we're up to 40,000, 50,000. So again, having relevance and again paralleling a crash is very interesting. So what are some what are some implications of Bitcoin? Like, what are some of its greatest potential? Then we're talking about like an alternative currency. Like, why do we care about Bitcoin?
Can I?
Yeah, go ahead.
You first.
That way, well, I like what you said just now. I think it's a good opportunity to talk about. You're talking about the virus, and you have the economy, really taking a hit, and you have these stimulus packages being issued. Like Trump did his 10 months ago, however long that was. The next one's in Congress. I think it either just got passed or it's about to get passed right now. And what you're seeing, I mean, you're just printing up all this money, right? So what is the value of all this paper money if you can just keep making more and more and more? There's, where does it end? You're just devaluing it for everyone, right? So what you're seeing right now, and there's the guy's name is Michael Saylor, right? So he's like an internet superhero right now, at least like on Twitter, because he was really the first. I mean, and there have been some companies that have been doing it before, but in August of last year, he took 450. They're a software company, and they had a lot of cash being held in their treasury. And he took like 425 plus or minus a few million of their cash treasury. And he said, dude, I'm losing like 7 or 8% of my money year over year on inflation. So this is stupid. and he took 425 whatever million and just straight up bought Bitcoin, and holding Bitcoin in their treasury as a hedge against inflation, right? Because if you're just holding cash, you're losing money. And since then, you have a whole slew of companies. The biggest one the past few weeks has been Tesla, and Elon done the same thing. And we were already in the cycle, like that parallel 2017 for these next, I don't know, 6, 10, 12 months, whenever you would have the next bubble. But that's really just been throwing gasoline on the fire. It's been really cool.
Chris,
yeah,
were you familiar with that? Like what?
Yeah, I can go ahead and add to that. So I guess the question is, why Bitcoin? And I guess the answer is, it's nuanced, but there are a few major aspects of these cryptocurrencies that I think the world kind of needs right now. Decentralization, you're always going to hear that when you ask somebody that question, and that's important. It really is. But, one thing you found out with the 2008 financial crash was that you have these centralized parties that have so much control that they can honestly affect an entire currency and its value. And then if they destroy it, they just get bailed out via taxpayer money. It's like it never even happened, except everybody else gets totally screwed for it, So decentralization, the fact that you don't have these sole corrupt parties that can do whatever they want, poke and prod it, it's everywhere, you can't shut it down, which means it's censorship resistant, which is huge. Because, one aspect of money is that it's kind of like speech in some sense. In fact, I wish I had done a little bit more research on this particular topic beforehand, but Julian Assange, everybody knows, is the WikiLeaks guy. Basically, the U.S. government wanted to shut him down for releasing secrets and, all kinds of military stuff for the U.S. government. And I think it was, you're going to have to correct me if I'm wrong here, Craig, but I think it was 2012. The government was just totally tired of it. They were like, we're going to shut this guy down. So they got PayPal and all of these different payment processing systems, the really big ones at the time, to pull out their support for Julian Assange. And they basically just cut this guy off. Like, there's no way you can make money now. Like, we just destroyed you because we went to these US companies and said, no way. And they just fell in step. Like, it wasn't even a question whether or not Julian Assange was doing something that was actually good or bad for the country. And to be honest, that's irrelevant. The fact that he was giving the US people information about what the US government was doing, that was against its own laws. And the US government just shut him down. So what did he do? He started accepting Bitcoin because he had to. He had no other choice. What happened? Bitcoin blew up to $20,000. They basically turned Julian Assange into what almost amounted to a billionaire at the time, because they wanted to censor him. And so Bitcoin, you can't censor Bitcoin. I mean, you can't shut it down unless you shut down the internet, It's an immutable public ledger, and it's always going to be there. So I think that's probably the key aspects of Bitcoin, I would say, that the world kind of needed at that point in time. And I think it's really what keeps cryptocurrencies evolving. And it's like this group of people who really, really believe in it. I don't want to call them all libertarians because they're definitely not, but they have some percent of a libertarian mindset that says control over your money should be on you, not on some other corrupt centralized party. And if you need to give money to someone anywhere in the world, you should be able to do that quickly and securely. And I think, that's probably what I would say is the most important features of Bitcoin. That is why it's why it's $50,000.
Is the ability to give money to somebody else across the world, to do it privately, but don't we have other apps these days to do that as well? Like what?
Anonymously, but not privately. I do have to correct you on that because those are two different things. Technically, Bitcoin's not private at all because the blockchain itself is just a public ledger. So everyone can see every transaction on Bitcoin that's ever happened since the dawn of Bitcoin. So in that way, it's not private, but it is anonymous in that you don't know. There are ways to tie it back to people, but you don't know who's sending transactions for what purpose. Yeah, so anonymous but not private.
Craig, what are some other of the benefits, the good things that maybe we didn't talk about, or is there any that we covered? And if we did, feel free to jump over to the bad things. We got to talk about both sides, you know.
I mean, I think you covered the good things pretty well, right? Instant use or instant transmission of money across the world, right? If I want to send money to, well, I mean, you're both of y'all from New Orleans, so I know you've driven down the street, all these shops where you can send money back to Central America. At least in my part of in Kenner, like there was up over on like William Street, but there's a fee for that. If you want to wire money, there's a fee for that. Similarly, there are fees when you do send Bitcoin, but they're generally, unless you're in like a super exciting, volatile point of time with Bitcoin, it's a fraction of that.
All right. So what about the negative sides?
Well, fees would definitely be one. I mean, it was created to be cheap, secure, and global. And that was definitely the case for a long, long time. But I guess one of the limitations of Bitcoin, and not of all crypto, a lot of cryptos have solved the scalability issue, but Bitcoin in general has a limit of something like 4 transactions per second. And if you compare that to something like the Visa network has something like 1,700 transactions per second. So in terms of scale,
company.
Yeah. So they're highly scalable, whereas Bitcoin is not that scalable. So transactions are cheap unless everybody's trying to transact at Bitcoin all at once, and then transaction fees go way up. And like I said, other cryptocurrencies have kind of solved that issue, and Bitcoin itself is still kind of working on it. But that is definitely one of the limitations is transaction fees can definitely get high. It's a bit slow, but it's also, it's the original cryptocurrency. So it's still working some of those things out.
Well, so Chris, I'll ask you a follow up with that. And then Craig, you could tell us of a different downside or add to it. But so what are we looking at with the fees then? How much are the fees?
It totally depends, and it's also somewhat voluntary. So if you want to pay a higher fee, you're higher up the pecking order. You pay a lower fee, you could wait days for your transaction to get set in the blockchain. So, I can't give you a number, but it's higher than it should be. It's higher than making a Visa transaction where they take 2-3% right off the top. Or like up to a maximum amount or whatever. It's something where you're talking about a digital currency. They had definitely planned for it to be cheap. And unfortunately, due to unforeseen consequences of how many users it has and the limitations of the block size and that sort of thing, it didn't really pan out that way. But like I said, it's something that they are consistently working on, and there have been results. You heard me talk about segregated witness earlier in SegWit, which created Bitcoin Cash, and we can talk about that in more detail if we have time to. But that is evidence that the Bitcoin core team is working towards trying to make Bitcoin more scalable and cheaper.
Okay, so if someone just invests $100 and tries to buy $100 worth of Bitcoin, what fee? Like, what's the range there?
It depends on how fast you want that $100. You want that $100 right away. If Bitcoin is rallying right now and it's up towards $50,000 again, and everybody's trying to transact, the fee could potentially be pretty high. if you don't really care, you're just buying it to hold on to it like a digital asset rather than an actual currency, or rather than trying to trade it over and over again, then, you pay a little fee and wait a couple days, and that block will eventually be forged and you will have your Bitcoin.
All right. Not dwelling on that. Craig, you got any other negative stuff?
Well, so I can add to what he was saying just there. The average fee at this point in time right now is $1.39, roughly under an hour if you want your $100, right? If you want it in under 20 minutes, those fees are going to be about 3 times as much. And I can't remember if I said this is SegWit, but generally using what Chris was talking about with SegWit, that'll lower your fee anywhere from like 30 to 50% in fees. So that's it. Yeah, like you said, it's a scale, right? If how fast you want it, if you can wait. Like Venmo is a great example, right? They probably don't like me because every time I take money out of Venmo and put it in my account, I say 1 to 3 days, so I don't.
Yeah,
they don't make any fees off me, right? But if I want it right then and there, that's when I get hit with the fee.
So the one you said is on average right now $1 something. That's no matter how much you're trying to buy, or is that for the $100?
Yeah, it's not depend. Like you could buy $100 worth of Bitcoin, you could buy $1,000 worth of Bitcoin. It's not generally going to impact the amount you buy is not going to impact as much. What fees?
The fee is relative, but it's not relative to the amount you're trying to transact. It's relative to how much everyone else in the Bitcoin network is paying for their fee.
Right.
If that makes sense.
Think about it when I live in Houston, well, because I'm like half in Houston, half in New Orleans, but they have the toll roads, right? And from 7 a.m. to like 9 a.m., you're paying like $1 or whatever for that one use, right? But if you're using that at like 10 a.m. Up until rush hour again, it's like 25 cents or something, right?
All right. So some other negative things. I mean, what you got?
Sorry,
Craig?
I forgot I was supposed to add on to a negative.
Well, this one's negative for a second. All right, let's talk about how bad Bitcoin is.
I don't like being negative, but if I had to, one that everyone else is always really negative about, I always want to talk about are Bitcoin's it's so bad for the environment because it just consumes so much power for the sole purpose of doing a math problem, right? And I mean, they got a point. It uses a hell of a lot of electricity. I don't know if you want me to just like make a case against why it's not bad. I know you want to be negative, so I'll just say, yeah, it uses a lot of power because you're mining, right? The way that Bitcoin runs is you have all these miners competing against each other to solve the next block, and that's what makes the whole network, come to a consensus, right? Because somebody solves it, and then a bunch of the other nodes have to come to consensus and basically check the math to make sure everything's fine, and then that's what makes it immutable.
I think, I just asked you guys to, and Chris started this talking about the blockchain and Ledger, Segway. Like, guys, these are things that are beyond the heads right now. Like, I
know, I'm trying my best to layman's it for you, man.
I know. It's a complex topic. So many people about it, you lose the people that are noobs, and you're just true. Like, it's like, all right, so let's start on gear 4. No, so the blockchain is what, really simply?
It's a public immutable, which means you can't change it, ledger of transactions. It's basically it's particularly when you're talking about Bitcoin, it can be different for different cryptocurrencies, but for Bitcoin and most other cryptocurrencies like it is just a ledger of transactions. That in the most layman's way possible, that's all it is.
A ledger of transactions, and that is where the transparency comes in, and the benefits have extended pretty wildly. So tell us about that. Then why is that? Why does that have so much significance of having a ledger of transactions?
Well, yeah, it's not necessarily the ledger itself that is significant. It is its properties. The fact that you can't change it, the fact that it's public, and the fact that it's um, validatable via arithmetic. Let me layman's that. You can always prove the information in the ledger is correct because of math. Each block in the chain they basically run a mathematical formula on it, and they come up with a number. Well, it's not really a number. It's got characters and digits, but you come up with something that is mathematically provable at the end, and you can run the calculations all the way back through the chain, and you should be able to get those numbers every single time. If someone changes even so much as a comma, the number is going to be different, and you can tell somebody fucked with it. So it's immutable, and it's mathematically provable, and it's public. And those are the things that make it significant.
Great. Hey, Craig, so what implications is that like use throughout different industries, or like what does that mean for like an average person trying to understand, like, cool, we could remember who bought what from who?
Yeah.
Even though, sorry, correcting myself, right, is like you don't know who, but
if I know what your address is, right, I can go on any network explorer and say, hey, look, okay, Tyler sent more money to this other guy, right? It's not if I don't know, I just see address 1 sent to address 2, and this is how long it took. This is how many confirmations it had. Confirmations, by the way, you'll see that it's if you go and you buy on an exchange or send, if I'm sending you some Bitcoin, I think generally most have to wait 6 confirmations before you see it. And that just means the math has been checked 6 times to make sure it's right before sending any money back and forth, right? That's you'll see that at least in some wallets. But I mean, what does it mean? I don't know. It's right now, I think the most apparent use for Bitcoin is a store of value and a hedge against fiat currency.
Mm-hmm.
A store of value and a hedge.
Store of value. Yeah. Right? So gold is a store of value.
Yeah. Go ahead. And that basically you can put your fiat currency, your US dollar, into something that is inherently inflationary instead of deflationary, right? So the US dollar, in 30 years, your money is going to be worth less. Nobody likes to think of that as a tax, but it's a devaluation tax. Your children, if they have the same $100,000 you have in the bank right now, are going to have less money 30 years from now. You can put that money into Bitcoin, and Bitcoin is made to be inflationary, and that there's only a specific amount, and it actually gets rarer over a long period of time. And in that way, inherently, it would theoretically also rise in value. And so it's when he says it's a hedge against inflation. Sorry, I may have had those terms backwards, but what he means is that basically you can put your money into something that isn't going to have that same inflationary tax that fiat currencies have, like the US dollar, because of Federal Reserve, fractional reserve banking, and that sort of thing.
Okay. Yeah, that's cool. I did hear something that maybe we will check out later and put up some links to some research or something, but about all of the use of the blockchain and the ledger, like keeping track of all those transactions. It has more benefits than I understand, but let's continue on to something else of like for the average person, what does it look like if they want to invest? Like what should they pay attention to? How do they know what's a good investment? Okay, Bitcoin, great. There's a whole lot of other coins out there too. Like where does somebody start? Or Craig, what do you tell people whenever they're like, oh, okay, that sounds good. I'm interested. What should I do?
Yeah, so everyone knows about Bitcoin now, but it's all about what's the next hot thing, right? I mean, how many articles do you see on any of these websites? This is the next Bitcoin, or what's the next Bitcoin going to be? You know, things that are important to look when you're evaluating what new altcoin you want to invest on or invest in. I mean, some best practices is one, is it decentralized or is it centralized? And when I say that, it's how much power does the founding team have over things like the total supply or the coin supply, right? Are they able to manufacture more? Are they able to how much pre-mine, and pre-mine is what percent of the total supply of coins? And just think of that as like total amount of shares that exist that you can trade for like a publicly traded company. How many coins is the team allotting for themselves, right? Am I going to throw a bunch of money into this brand new coin, and then a year later, or whatever the time frame that they have, that they will then be able to trade their coins? I mean, did they just want to just dump it all on the market and sell all their shares and make money and then just go on? It's what are the intentions of the team? What's their experience? What use case does it have, right? A lot of coins today, and we're gonna have, this is gonna start getting into altcoins, but everybody knows Ethereum is the number two behind Bitcoin, right? And that's just because it has the ability to use smart contracts, which I'm sure Chris is going to be able to tell us a whole lot about. But so many coins you see today are our smart contracts. We're gonna be more efficient than Ethereum, right? Because we're gonna be faster, or like what Chris is saying, more scalable, or provide this extra functionality. So I don't want to say avoid, but do your due diligence on the copycat coins, right? This is the next Litecoin, which is just Bitcoin, but tweak a few things and fork it. I'm just going on a tangent, but yeah, just do your due diligence, use case, do your background on the team, and do they have the ability to modify their network on their own? Things like this.
What is use case?
Use case
like
is
what problem are they trying to solve?
So each coin can solve a problem. And I'll zoom out and say Bitcoin, we talked about earlier, kind of solves the problem of a centralized currency that there's people in control that are manipulating it, printing money, and using it as they want. Decentralized removes that ability. So that is Bitcoin's purpose. Is that fair to say?
Catching on, Tyler.
All right. So then, so each coin has its own purpose. So
in some sense, yeah.
Okay. Well, at least that's one thing you look at. Like Craig was saying, is the use case, and then the other is kind of like the amount of shares available is the equivalent verbiage for like if it were a publicly traded stock. What was that?
So like a good example is Ripple, right? Or let's just go with Ripple or Doge. Doge is a good one. Not that they are similar in any way to each other, but they have a huge supply of coins. I think Ripple has like 65 billion, right? So someone's like, oh man, Ripple's at like 30 cents. And, back in 2017, it got to like $3. And, Rip, you see these guys on Twitter or Reddit. It's like, Rip, well, I'm not stopping buying Doge until like $1. It's like Doge is never going to be $1 because, Chris, do you know what the supply of Doge is? Is it in the hundreds of billions or?
Yeah, it's a lot. Not off the top of my head.
Yeah. So if let's just say Doge has a supply of 100 billion Dogecoin, right? If
128 billion.
Okay, so 128 billion, right? So $1 Doge, right, gives you almost 1/10 the market cap that Bitcoin is, because Bitcoin's hovering right around $1 trillion right now. And Dogecoin is a meme coin. It doesn't do anything. It's great. It's great as a vehicle to introduce the younger generation into cryptocurrencies, and but people who think it'll get anywhere near $1, over $1, 50 cents, it's just not going to happen because of so many coins that exist of it.
Right on. Chris, you can continue on, whatever.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, first of all very good advice. If you start getting into cryptocurrencies, definitely look into those things because it does matter. It does have an effect on a cryptocurrency's value. But my advice is usually the opposite, in that, I like to go simply, it's a complex topic. Cryptocurrencies, just the word itself scares people. So I say, download Robinhood, download Coinbase, just get your toes wet. Just start buying some cryptos. Like, you've heard the name Bitcoin, buy a little bit of Bitcoin, see what happens in a month. You think Dogecoin sounds nice, buy a little I mean, most people aren't investing their life savings into cryptocurrency right off the bat. They're trying to figure out what the hell it is. And once you start doing it, it becomes much easier to like get involved and to start learning. So like, I say, forget about everything we're talking about. Go download Coinbase, buy $10 worth of Bitcoin, sit on it, buy something else, start watching those numbers. And then if you like it, if you enjoy it, if it's something you want to get into, then the world will open up for cryptocurrencies. But that's where you get started, in my opinion.
I actually can't disagree, because I can't tell you how many shit coins I bought in like 2017 when everything was blowing up, right? Because that's
same.
I learned a lot. Like, I mean, 95% of what I bought was total trash and absolutely worthless now. But I got a lot of knowledge out of it,
and it was fun.
Yeah, it was. I had a great time, because you have all your group chats, and it's like, oh, guys, Potcoin, it's gonna change everything. Like, just wait.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So was kind of that motivation. I mean, it sounds like that's part of the fun of it. Like, there's some fun in getting a little bit this one, that one. Was part of it, were you hoping that, or were you thinking that, hey, this one might just pop off and increase, 1,000% from like a tiny fraction of a penny to a real penny, something like that?
Yeah, I was like, dude, I just bought 10 shitcoin. I'm be rich tomorrow. Like,
oh, that's an actual.
That's how most people think when they start buying shitcoins. But it doesn't pan out that way. But it gets you further in the ecosystem, and you're gonna have some fun with it, and you're gonna learn something or two, and you're gonna be part of an ecosystem that, I mean, this is gonna have tremendous impact on the future. And no matter what anybody tells you, this is still very much the early days of cryptocurrency, 100%. So get in now, start learning now. And it's not that hard. You can get started just by downloading an app, so might as well.
All right. What coins do you guys like the most?
I'll let you start, Greg.
I don't have a whole lot, really, because I learned my lessons in 2017 with all the shit coins. But I mean, some Bitcoin, Ethereum, and I do have my biggest holding after that is one that is probably better to talk about a little bit later when we get on some other topics, because then it'll cascade. But yeah, I mean, nothing too fancy. What about you, Chris?
So I'm very, very bullish on Ethereum and Cardano right now. You'll hear me talk about Cardano all day. I mean, to me, it is the cryptocurrency, and I think it's going to be the future, or at least something's going to fork off of it and then be the future. But that is what I'm hedging my bets on. Cardano is my number one. That's my baby right there, and then Ether number two.
What is it? Because those are both, really strong smart contracts platforms. Without getting too technical, what is it about Cardano? Do you see it taking over Ethereum, or is it going to complement it, or are they competitors? Can they exist in the same world?
I think they'll exist in the same world, because, I mean, if you look at the commodities market, I mean, they're just a shit ton of commodities, and a lot of them don't even need to be there, but they exist in the same world. I mean, you can have gold 1, gold 2, silver, bronze. You can have everything under the sun, So it's okay for them to exist in the same world. But I do think in terms of how valuable it is and what problems it intends to solve, I think that Cardano has an edge over everything else. It also has the best support and the best team behind it. And every single thing that happens in Cardano, unlike almost every other cryptocurrency, is peer reviewed and tested and implemented first. And so just the fact that it's peer reviewed is totally different than what you find in literally cryptocurrencies are being created by dudes in their basements who are just forking the Bitcoin code, putting a pot leaf on their coin and then distributing it. That's it. This is a team full of people who spend their lives thinking about this stuff. And, and everything is peer reviewed. So they're not willing to do anything unless they really believe it's going to work.
Sure. And actually I'd like to add, to that, because Tyler, we're talking a lot about smart contracts here, and not going to get super into it, but I'm going to share something on the screen. Let me see if I can get it right. This was done by Fidelity, right? All these institutions are putting out the reports now that crypto is a big thing, and let's see, can you see it? There it is. Okay, so right here, it just breaks out what Chris was talking about, how we're in the beginning stages of crypto as a whole. But this gives you an idea of how much untapped value that crypto can attack or solve, right? So you've got Bitcoin. This was of May last year, right? So Bitcoin at the time was 172 billion. We're, like I said, right around $1 trillion there. We passed up Facebook. If you go down, you see gold at 11 trillion, stock markets at 89 trillion, global debt, global real estate. So if you look at really the last three, with the stock markets, global debt, and global real estate, those are all completely ripe markets that smart contracts will have applications on. And smart contracts, it's just it sounds, it's a contract that you can execute on blockchain, right? A really easy example is you have all these Kickstarter, right? Somebody wants to start a fund and they want to hit, let's say, $10,000, right? And once that $10,000 is raised, the money gets unlocked and it goes to whoever it needs to go to. You can code something on very similar to that on using smart contracts, except you get to eliminate the middleman, right? You don't need Kickstarter.com, right? That's just a third person that doesn't need to be there, and it's a risk vector, right? Something could always go wrong. Kickstarter could go bankrupt. The owner or the founder might do some malicious crap. That's just an example of the application that smart contracts will have in the real world.
No, that's really cool. So why? I don't understand the Bitcoin share over there. Why is Facebook 25% Bitcoin share? What's that mean?
So this paper was particularly about Bitcoin, right? So it's basically saying that Bitcoin at 172 billion, Facebook's at 684. Bitcoin has
the percentage
value. Right.
I see you. Okay, so yeah, it's the amount of people that are invested in Bitcoin is so significant that it's not going anywhere, and it's already here in a massive way. I love hearing what y'all really like about the industry, if I will, or that whole market. So some other things that are kind of up and coming about cryptocurrency, I should say instead. What are y'all excited about in cryptocurrency? You just named a really good one, Craig. So Chris, I guess.
Let's see. What am I excited about in terms of cryptocurrency? I hate to just fly back to Cardano again, but Craig mentioned something earlier that, like, you know, these things have use cases. Like each cryptocurrency generally tries to solve some problem or to have some benefit. And Cardano is trying to tackle a lot of different problems all at the same time. I should probably start with Ether. So Craig brought up smart contracts. Yeah, good timing. Craig brought up smart contracts. So smart contract is basically Ether's big. The reason why they call it a generation 2 cryptocurrency after Bitcoin, which is the generation 1 cryptocurrency, is because Ether has the ability to not only track transactions, but also run code on its network. And so that's what a smart contract is, or a decentralized application. You'll hear that a lot in the crypto space. They call them dApps, and also DeFi, which I'm sure we'll bring up again. But all that is code that's running on a smart contract capable cryptocurrency network. That was a lot of words. And I hope that was layman's enough for you. But basically, the benefit of that is exactly like Craig said. You have to rely right now on Kickstarter to get your funds. If you have a good product, you know, you have to rely on a trusted third party. And what these things, what these cryptocurrencies are trying to achieve is removing the trusted third party, because at the end of the day, you can't trust some of these people, you know, like Kickstarter's not so bad. They don't have a bad rep, but what's to stop them from, you know, Tyler creates a really cool ass product that sells really well, but it's somewhat controversial, and the US government says, hey, nope, cut it off, you know, and Kickstarter could definitely do that. It's in their terms of service. They could just shut you off and there's nothing you can do. Cryptocurrencies with smart contract support are totally not susceptible to that, because there's no third party who can just banhammer you. You know, it's decentralized. Like the code is law, and you'll hear them say that a lot. It just means, you know, the code, you put it up there and it runs and it's done. You're not going to change it. It is law.
So, was that like the purpose of Ethereum?
Yeah, I think Ether's purpose was to kind of extend the Bitcoin network to allow smart contracts. So Cardano, my favorite, wanted to take that one step further, because Ether also had some of the initial problems of Bitcoin, which it wasn't that scalable. I think its max was something like 8 transactions a second, which is like double Bitcoin, but still not very good. Security. So Ether, there was a very, very infamous thing that happened in the Ethereum network that we may also talk about, called the DAO. And basically someone uploaded a smart contract and a whole bunch of people got really excited about it, invested in it. And then because of a single bug in the code, somebody was able to siphon almost all of that money out of the smart contract. And I mean, it was like hundreds of millions of dollars of investment. It was actually the biggest publicly funded thing of all time. And some hacker was like, I'm just going to take all this money. And you couldn't do anything about it. I mean, the code is law. You made a mistake, you know? So Cardano is coming up ways to kind of solve that issue. But it's also trying to solve the interoperability issue, which I'll explain that as layman's as I can. So right now there's just tons of different cryptos, and most of them don't work well together. But Cardano is trying to build in something that I think they're calling it like side chain APIs. And basically what it means is that within the Cardano network, you can actually trade value with all these other different coins just with Cardano, which is something that basically nobody else is doing at this point, which is really great. But the biggest problem that I think it solved was scalability. So it's going to have a massive, and the amount of transactions it can hold per second actually will go up with the extra resources of people adding their own nodes and that sort of thing. So it could at some point feasibly compete or do better than something like the Visa network, which is, you know, it's something that we're going to need for a good future cryptocurrency.
Wow. Craig, feel free to jump in or talk about that or your favorite coins.
No, I'll go ahead and drop mine, I guess. I'll try and distill it shortly as I can. But so my favorite one, and we talked about earlier, you know, you have all these, you know, the copycat coins, but it's called QRL, and it stands for the quantum resistant ledger. So that's like a long name, but one there are, you know, very few existential threats to Bitcoin. You'll hear about government regulation, which has really been tried by China and India, and it really hasn't worked. I mean, you can't stop it. You have to start the internet. You have to stop the internet, like Chris said. But there are really rapid advances happening right now in the field of quantum computing, right? So it's pretty, if you remember, I mean, you're a little bit younger, but like Y2K was like a big deal in the 90s, right? And took years and years and years of preparation, because if the clock ticks, it's December 31st on in 1999, and midnight hits and the computers don't all switch over the right time, like it was like going to be catastrophic, really bad for everything, finance, computers, whatever. So we're approaching a similar type of event right now, because quantum computers, I mean, people have heard about it. Not many know. We're not all going to have quantum computers like on our phones, right? Like they're going to have applications in like chemistry, where you can synthesize or simulate like how a new medicine might like interact with your body, and just, you know, you can create new drugs with fewer side effects. It'll be good with logistics and like finding the best routes for trucks, you know, to go from destination to destination. But the other strength they're going to have is factoring really large numbers, and that's important because Bitcoin and pretty much every other crypto out there uses cryptography that is based on the multiplication of two large prime numbers, right? So what that means is that if you have a Bitcoin wallet and you generate your private key is the thing you're not ever supposed to give anybody, right? It's basically giving the keys to your safe. If they get this, they can go and take your money, no problem. But what your private key, it's called public private key cryptography. And using your private key, you generate your public key. And that's what I give you. Tyler, send me 1 Bitcoin. Here's my public key. I'm sending it to you. So if you're sending it to me, what your wallet does is essentially match up the private key to that public key and check, okay, your signature is what it's called, is valid, and that's what authorizes the network to process your transaction. So what quantum computers will be able to do is derive your private key once they have access to your public key, right? So let's say you send me that 1 Bitcoin, it gets relayed to the node, it's hanging out for the 10 minutes or so before the network is able to process it. And in that time period, you know, anyone could just run a script with using a quantum computer, a strong enough quantum computer is what I should say, because we have them now, but they're not strong enough yet. And it'll take your public key and it'll spit out your private key and it'll take your money. That being said, okay, go ahead.
Yeah, so you're going to have to explain quantum computing, but let me just summarize what I got out of what you're saying is, as of now, how transactions work is there's a public key and then a private key. Public key is only for sending, or there's a communication there where there's a sender and then the receiver, and one of them doesn't matter if it's known or private, while the other one, you definitely don't want anyone to know that, because then they have access to your thing. But you're saying that with this, people have that ability, or they will have that ability to actually figure out your key with this technology, and then maybe QRL is going to fix that problem.
Right. And 99% of people don't even see their own private key these days, because they're either holding their Bitcoin on an exchange, or they're using like a wallet that you probably heard the 12 or 24 words. You get these 24 words And that's, don't lose those, right? Because it's essentially the same thing as having your private key, but it just stores your private key for you. But yeah, no, so they're called signature schemes, right? And so Bitcoin, and it's not really important to know how it works because I'm not a mathematician and I couldn't tell you anyway. But Bitcoin and most other cryptos use elliptic curve cryptography for their signatures, right? And signature scheme is just the process or the algorithm, whatever that's used to sign and send your transaction. Now, QRL uses a brand new one called XMSS that is mathematically proven. You could have, the world's strongest quantum computer, and it's not going to matter because it's not going to be strong enough. There's no way around it. And what's important about it is that it has been using the signature scheme from the beginning, right? From the Genesis block, which just means day one, right? So why is that important? That's important because you get it all the time saying, oh, you're just creating FUD because Bitcoin or Ethereum or whoever will just upgrade. They'll fork, right? Either hard fork or soft fork, like what Chris was talking earlier. And that it depends which one you're talking about, but it means you're upgrading your code and changing the scheme. The problem is that's going to be very difficult because I liken it to changing the foundation of your home while you're living in it and still doing your daily, ins and outs, because it depends on what signature scheme you're going to use. For example, if Bitcoin wanted to tomorrow upgrade to XMSS, which is what is officially endorsed by NIST, which is just the National Institute of Standards and Technology, they basically set the government best practices for encryption, right? The encryption on your internet, they're recommended by them, and other standards bodies too. But well, I was talking about Bitcoin upgrading to it. It's just not going to be. It's not as simple because if you wanted to upgrade to it tomorrow, Chris, you know what Taproot? Are you familiar with Taproot?
No, can't say that I am.
So Taproot, Tyler, it's a Bitcoin and improvement proposal to make some limited smart contracts on Bitcoin a little bit better.
Okay.
And, it's been hanging out there as proposed, I think 2 or 3 years ago, and just 2 months ago, it was finally approved and it's going to be implemented. But it's going to take 2 more years to implement it, right? So unlike Y2K, we don't know when we're going to see a strong enough quantum computer. There's no date. We have idea. IBM is setting 2023, 2025. That's really aggressive targeting. The NIST, they have to have their full standardization done by 2023. So that I would put at the earliest potential time you could do it. But no one knows. You're not going to have the day, right? So if you're looking at 4 years for Bitcoin to do a hard fork, which is what you would need to do in that scenario, and upgrade their cryptography, you might be too late, and the whole network might be compromised by then.
And the Bitcoin core team is notably slow, so
they are very slow.
All right, so let's see. Still don't know what quantum computing is, and does that relate to?
I can try and layman's that for you if you want. I've never had to layman's quantum computing, but
I do like quantum physics a whole lot. So
okay, cool.
Someone's at front door.
Oh, sorry, somebody's ringing my doorbell. Okay, so layman's on quantum computing. So I would say that a classical computer, it does computation via bits, and a bit is just a 0 or a 1. And every single thing that happens on your computer is just a result of a ton of those computations. Everything, the video you see on your screen, the audio output, and everything you do on a computer is just that. A quantum computer leverages quantum phenomena, quantum mechanics, but in particular to quantum phenomena, entanglement and superposition to run computations instead on qubits. And qubits, the difference between a qubit and a bit is a qubit can be 0, it can be 1, or it can be both at the same time. That's what superposition is, and that's a quantum mechanic phenomena. We don't even really truly understand it, but the fact is it can be both. And then entanglement is when you somehow link the state of two qubits, and you can add an infinite amount of space in between those two qubits, and they will always have the same value. So if you flip 1 to 1, the other will be 1, no matter how far away it is. You flip 1 to 0, the other will be 0, no matter how far away. Nobody knows exactly how that works, but it does 100% of the time. So they basically use those two aspects of quantum mechanics to do entirely complex mathematical calculations. You may have heard like the P versus NP problem. NP is basically just very, very complex mathematics. Quantum computers excel at running calculations on NP problems and coming up with solutions at a rate much faster than you would ever see via a classical computer.
Yeah, and Tyler, to give you go ahead.
I said I don't know if that was layman's, but I did my best.
I think that's about as good as you're going to get. But to give you a flavor, Tyler, of how complex math, if you took the best classical computer we have today and ran the operations that you would need to crack the cryptography we're talking about right now, you could do it. It'll just, if you got 2 billion years to hang around, that's how long it would take, right? But
exactly.
with a quantum computer, you can do it in under a minute.
So how long? I mean, that's happening right now. You were saying those calculations.
Kind of. Yeah. I mean, there are quantum computers that exist, like Craig was saying, and they can calculate really intense problems, but not to the level that you would need to make that sort of thing happen right now. We still have time, although they're getting better and better every day. And I saw an article yesterday that was, we calculated a solution to this problem in about 14 million times faster than we could on a classical computer on a quantum computer. So it's happening. And Google's working on it, IBM, all the big guys. So, a lot of these cryptocurrencies, a lot of these teams are what's called implementing quantum resistance, or doing their diligence to try and get out ahead of that.
Matter of fact, I'm going to share this because everybody uses it. Well, most people have heard of Coinbase. I'm sure a lot of people are using it. They filed their S1, which is just their intent, to go public here was it last week? And so in their S1, let's see, is this the tab? Yes. If you scroll down to, there's a whole section on risks and all that stuff. I mean, even they know, because if you look, I think I have it highlighted here. It's just, one of the risks is development in mathematics technology, including in digital computing, algebraic geometry, and quantum computing, that could result in the cryptography being used by Bitcoin and Ethereum becoming insecure or ineffective. Mm-hmm. So they know about it.
Yeah.
And this is the QRL.
I mean, I hope they know about the QRL.
Who are you talking about? Who was that from?
Coinbase.
It was Coinbase.
Oh, Coinbase. Okay, cool. So they're looking ahead and protecting everybody, or at least that's their goal. So they're on the front of that.
That's just their disclaimer saying, here's the risk, and if you choose
warning, this could happen. Yeah.
Oh, that's what that was saying. Yeah. Okay. Dang. No, that is kind of, that is just mind blowing, and it's right up my alley of things that I love. I mean, I love math, and then I love the quantum physics. The double slit experiment of is it a photon or a particle? It's both. How can it do that? That, and then you see that in zeros and ones in computer language. That's freaking nuts. That's really cool. So What was this next space race y'all wanted to talk about? What is that? Is that related to what we're talking about?
Well, that was when we had talked the other day. I had just referred to the advent of I guess modern quantum computing as the next space race, right? Because forget Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, right? Because yeah, that'll be at risk, right? But let's look at it from like a nation state perspective, right? Right now, the U.S. is hacking all kinds of Chinese stuff. China is hacking all kinds of U.S. files. It's all encrypted, so nobody can read it, right? But they're going to sit on that stuff for 5 years, 10 years, and as soon as they got a quantum computer, they're going to decrypt it, and they're going to have all that information, right? I'm sure your data right now you have is being stored away, in some file that someone's going to decrypt later on and use it to market and sell Tyler a better microphone for his next podcast episode.
Man, so the world will end. That'll be terrible.
Well, they're not going to tell you, right? China's not going to make some announcement saying, "Oh, hey, rest of the world, we've got it now. So we've got all your information." So
okay, I see what you're saying. Like the next space race is just a country racing to get this technology to what's the word? Not encrypt, but decrypt. Yeah, another country's like secret stuff. And then they're also racing to protect themselves from that, right?
You can't protect yourself from what is already out there, right? So if they've got whatever decrypted info you got, you can't retroactively go and upgrade that encryption. All you can do is, whenever NIST makes their standardization or recommendation, you go and you slap that whatever algorithm they come up with, you go and plug that in like ASAP.
Gotcha. All right. I like the idea, by the way, where this is going of like, y'all are welcome to go deep into technicals and details that you're really passionate about, that you want to say, and actually just, you don't have to keep it so layman's if that would like impede you from saying what you want to say. And then we'll have our other layman's parts. I guess, right now I want to throw out there Dogecoin. I don't want to keep y'all all night, but so let's just talk about like the essential stuff that's kind of going on in the news, and but then of course if you're really feeling like spinning off into something else, we can do this again another time, or somebody else that wants to talk about it, whether it's you guys or somebody else wants to, we could round out whatever, or you know what I'm saying? Like we have so much freedom. We don't have to do everything. So,
and there's so much to talk about.
Exactly. There's just so much to talk about that. I just want to talk about what most people are thinking right now. That'd definitely be Dogecoin. Yeah. And then kind of like, when will Bitcoin be so practical and usable around the world? And, other things of that nature, like what to expect in the future. So, I'll leave that up to you guys. Like which of those do you want to talk about first?
Yeah, let's keep it casual. Let's talk about the current events. What's going on. Doge is big. Elon Musk is tweeting about Doge. He's on the Doge train big time.
Yeah.
So
if there's anything that Elon Musk loves, it's memes, and Dogecoin is entirely memeable.
Yeah, that's. I don't know what to think. So like, as somebody that's been interested in Bitcoin, like I've been keeping my eyes on it, not as much as you two, but seeing him like pump up Dogecoin kind of got me a little worried, as I think about all the people that just like blindly follow everything he does and support him in every way. But they don't really know what they're getting into. Dogecoin is a joke. It started as a joke. And it can't, like you were saying, Craig, it's not going to go over $1. The supply is not proportional to like the value that you would expect or what you would want to invest in. So him doing all these tweets, like pumping it, is could that be hurtful to cryptocurrencies, or would that be more hurtful to maybe just those investors, or is it a good thing?
People are making money on the way up too, though. I mean, if it were hurtful for something to increase in value, the entire stock market would be hurtful all the time. And it is hurtful a lot to a lot of people, but it's also the best way to increase wealth for almost everybody. So it's the risk you sign up for when you want to put your money into something that is inherently volatile right now. And to be honest, to me, it's not that big of a deal unless you're putting your entire life savings into Dogecoin, which I don't recommend. Then it's not that big of a deal. I mean, I think it'll go up more. Honestly, I think it'll go down more. The thing is, say what you will about its market cap and its supply, which there's a shitload of, but it's just a word for word hard fork of Bitcoin. Dogecoin is Bitcoin, except it's a meme and it's kind of a joke. But really, what is something value? I mean, if fiat currency has taught us anything, it's that its value is what you think its value is. And if everybody keeps hearing about Dogecoin and they want to buy Dogecoin because they think the puppy's cute or because Elon Musk is talking about it, the value is going to go up. And even though it makes no sense for its market cap to be 1/8 of Bitcoin, I mean, think about all the things in 2021 and 2020 that make no fucking sense. Like, we are living in a simulation right now, I'm telling you, and like none of it makes any sense. It's all BS. Like, I think Dogecoin could hit $1. I'm not betting that it will, but it is what you make of it. And people love the meme. People love the fact that it's a joke. And that is actually one of its biggest benefits. And it could shoot it up to the moon, man. That's all I'm saying. Once again, I am not recommend you buy Dogecoin, but it's possible. It is definitely possible.
You want to put two pizzas on it?
2 pizzas in 10,000 Bitcoin pizzas? Nah, I'll pass on that. Some Domino's pizzas? I do enjoy myself some Domino's.
I've always been more of a Papa John's guy, but
You're more of a Papa John's guy? Blood in the streets, Greg.
Well, so that brings up an interesting point of so like the people they just love the memes and they love like kind of I think it's like the community aspect of it. If so many people are doing it and the joke just gets funnier and funnier the more people that support it. And that's kind of like the whole Reddit effect, right? So
yeah.
So this is about the long and short of it. Correct me where I'm wrong, but so you have the way that Reddit is now able to influence or has influenced in stocks. GameStop being one, Dogecoin being another. It's not a stock, but still hugely significant now. Is because they didn't like the way that some really wealthy hedge funds were betting against their favorite companies. And so then they all rallied together to say, hey, no, we're going to save our favorite company, being GameStop. And then they had a few others in there. But so now with that, they banded together using using Reddit, the forum platform, and then so they're able to save the stock, shoot it way up, and hedge funds lost billions and billions of dollars. And so this is the Reddit effect that we're looking at now, and I just love the significance of it, where the little guy is now influencing the market and actually having a muscle and really something that the wealthiest people have never seen before, right? So what do you think is like, where will this balance out? Like, what's that entity that tries to monitor and regulate the market, the SEC?
The SEC.
Yeah. So how is things going to balance out, or I don't know what's your take on this whole thing. What's some background info that you'd like to add? I'd like to just open this up to talk about this whole phenomenon.
You want to start, Craig, or you want
Yeah,
me to?
I think it's great. I mean, I'm just sitting here with my popcorn. Like, I didn't buy any GameStop because I figured by the time you hear about it on the news, you're too late, right? Because you're riding the tail end. If the media's got a hold of it, you're too late, right? So that's probably not bad advice to take for a crypto coin too, right? Like if you hear about something blowing up and let me get some, might be too late. But hey, just buy it and see what happens. I think it is I don't know what the word is, but it symbolizes exactly what is happening with, and crypto fits right in, right? Because the whole emerging sector of cryptocurrency is what Chris was talking about earlier about DeFi or decentralized finance, right? Because you're talking about, you have, Wall Street, uh, you know, ganging up together to short this stock. Reddit and the average guy fight back. Robinhood then stops allowing you to buy, which is like hella bad and illegal and wrong, and that's why they're in Congress for it and all this stuff, giving these testimonies. But in the same way that Bitcoin, because he was saying code is law, right? Bitcoin, you can pull it up. There are only ever 21 million Bitcoin. You can't change it, right? It's not something you can fork it, right? And maybe change it to 50 million or something like that, but no one's going to support it. So in the same way, that's what decentralized finance will solve and can solve with what you're seeing on Wall Street, right? Because you're getting all these DApps and networks that are running that you can lend on, you can get insurance on, you can buy, sell, trade without needing a Robin. Well, you don't need like a centralized entity to facilitate your trades, right? You can do it, and it's not going to be corrupt, and nothing bad is going to happen because it's in the code, right? As long as your code's good, you're going to be good.
So on the term, I guess on the term of Reddit effect, I would say the cat's out the bag. I mean, people want a stable stock market, and they want to know that what they're investing in doesn't fly up and down like crazy, but I think it's overrated. I mean, the problem is, with all of these new cryptocurrencies that exist out there, you can't shut them off. I think it's just a reality now. I think the fact that the market is in a different place than it's ever been with retail investors in the market and in the greater quantities than we've ever seen. Weird shit's gonna happen. I don't know how you put that cat back in the bag, and I think it's just a reality we have to deal with now. And actually, I think it's a good thing. I think that the volatility of the market offers a lot of opportunity for average Joe Blows to make some money, to lose some money as well. But, as we've seen here, someone's always losing money. Someone always loses. And most of the time, it's the retail investor, and the hedge funds win. So if the retail investor wins and also loses, I'm more okay with that than the standard state of affairs. So whatever, a volatile, it's like a rated R movie. If you don't want to watch it, don't watch it. If you don't want to be in Dogecoin, don't invest in Dogecoin. Like, go for something more stable. That's totally fine. But cat's out the bag now. I think that's just a reality.
Yeah, this is my rationale on, like, I'm actually thinking now is more ripe of a time for cryptocurrencies than before because of that. Is that like a rationale that makes sense, where a lot of people that were retail traders in stock market, they're seeing this fluctuation and this uncertainty of like never before? Would that move people to pull their money out of the market and then put it into cryptos or something else?
There's probably some of that. I mean, I think that it's ripe for cryptocurrencies because it's more available than ever. I mean, the fact that you can buy cryptos on Robinhood, You can download Coinbase in 2 seconds and start buying cryptos. It's pretty nice. Like Craig was saying earlier, like it used to not be that way, and it wasn't safe either. I mean, I've had money in exchanges like Cryptopia, aka Craptopia, that eventually went down. I lost all the money that was in there. You know what I'm saying? So it's safer, it's more available. In that way, the time is right for cryptocurrencies. But also, yeah, I mean, I think that it's a good point that we're seeing a lot of craziness in the market. We're seeing a lot of ups and downs with COVID and with uncertainty. People feel more comfortable taking money out of the market and putting it into something that's different, especially something that, you know, their friends keep telling them is inherently inflationary, which, you know, it is true and also not true. I mean, it's mostly true, but these things also are incredibly volatile, you know, but over a long period of time, I think you're gonna do much better in keeping your money in a stable crypto or something, you know, so one of the big six like Bitcoin or Ether, than you are going to do just trading in the stock market. Unless, you know, maybe if you throw all your money in the S&P 500 or do something safe, then, you know, maybe it'll be comparable. But I think for the most part, people are starting to see that cryptos is a pretty good way to hedge your bets on fiat currency and inflation.
We should talk about stable coins because it's kind of like the latest effort or idea by the governments. You know, there's that saying, right? How does it go? It's first they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you, and then you win, right? And so we're in between steps 3 and 4 right now. I'd say you probably are already at the part where you won, but you'll be reading a whole lot about it if you expose yourself to crypto news about stable coins, right? And it's the wolf in sheep's clothing. Like China right now, you can read about it. They're trialing their digital yuan, which the yuan is just the Chinese, you know, money, but it's their cryptocurrency, but it has all the properties of traditional fiat money, right? There's nothing new or cool about it except the fact that it's a blockchain, right? But it's bad, you know. And then you'll read about Janet Yellen, who's the Fed chair, and she's making comments this past week about, yes, we're looking into a U.S. stable coin or digital dollar type thing, and it's not revolutionary. It's just the same old system with a mask on.
So,
with control pre-baked in.
I mean, it sounds kind of good. I mean, maybe I'm not understanding some. Or China, you're saying they have a stable coin that
stable coins probably not the right word. More like a digital dollar or digital yuan, right? Because you'll have stable coins that have been created that are mostly on the Ethereum network, and they're just pegged 1-to-1 in supply to whatever that denomination, whatever countries that like currency is, right? So however many dollars there are, that's however many. Like one of them is USDC, US dollar coin. I'm pretty sure is what it stands for.
And then there's USDT, which is USD Tether, and there's DAI, and he's exactly right. It's like it's the value of this stable coin is exactly 1-to-1 the value of some insert fiat currency here. Which it has its uses. I'm less afraid of that than I am of something like Ripple, which is kind of also what you were saying. It's a cryptocurrency, but it takes out all of the features that made something like Bitcoin great, which is like it's not decentralized. They found ways to implement more centralized control via nodes, and then basically you have a bit more. They have it's like half of their cryptocurrency. There's the token, but then there's also the concept of like debt and IOUs, which is something that I think Ripple was kind of first to the party on. But it's basically a cryptocurrency that was made to be more of a compromise. I don't like that word compromise because it's not really a compromise. It's like we want central banks to adopt this standard, and that's kind of what Ripple is.
And Facebook wanted to do their own with what was it called, Libra? Like they wanted it to be the standard. So yeah, it's something to take note of, right? Not necessarily like an existential threat, because I don't think digital
They'll
dollars
exist in the same marketplace. You're exactly right, and you can't shut them down anyway.
Yeah.
Unless we get the type of control that North Korea or China has over our internet, then even then it would be really difficult to do. You got to shut down the internet. So I think they'll exist in the same marketplace, but I do think that it could be an existential threat in the way that if you get everybody involved, if you choose one coin to be a global coin and you choose Ripple, then you're going to have a lot of people in a similar circumstance to where they were during the 2008 financial crisis, because they can do whatever they want. The good news is that with cryptocurrency, they'll always be Bitcoin. So you get to choose, what system you want to be in. But of course, if you want to transact in the United States of America, you got to play by the US's rules. So, I wouldn't call it an existential threat, but I'm hoping that the future of cryptocurrency is not something like Ripple or a stable coin. It's something closer to Cardano, Ether, Bitcoin, but one that solves a few more of those problems, some of those limitations.
Cool. Well, when do y'all think that it'll be like usable throughout the world? Like what has to happen for?
Technically, it already is. But to answer your question, like in a more reasonable way, I would say probably 5 to 10 years. I think we're going to have a global crypto that is as easy to transact at a grocery store as using your credit card now. That is my guess. We have a few hurdles to jump through before we get to that point. But I would say I'm bullish on 5 to 10 years.
I think it's reasonable, but I think it's important to denote, like, I wouldn't expect to be going over to the grocery and paying for your groceries like in Bitcoin, right? Because as he was saying earlier, I don't, at least personally, I don't think they're going to solve like scalability to the extent where you're going to be getting the transactions per second like you would with your Visa or whatever it is. So probably be something like a second layer solution, which is just processing the transaction off network and then reintegrating it at a later point in time, just for the sake of expediency. It's just kind of what like Litecoin was. You know what, Chris? You know what Litecoin's TPS is? Like Litecoin is exactly what Bitcoin is, except it's just faster.
Yeah, it was a different algorithm for calculating blocks, though, right? It wasn't like a major difference, but I remember that the algorithm is slightly weaker, but because of that, it's also a good bit faster. I don't believe that, and I could be super wrong about this. We'll have to look it up later, but I don't think it's that much better than Bitcoin. Like, I don't think it's notable, but not compared to something like the Visa network, 1,700 transactions per second sort of thing,
Right.
Okay. Well, I definitely wanted to talk about mining. That's always a big question. I think when they first get into cryptocurrency, they invest a little bit in a Bitcoin and maybe their favorite animal-faced coin or meme, whatever they want to get into. But then people always think about mining. So, yeah, we didn't talk about that. What is mining, and then how is it lucrative, right? That's what everyone hears is like mining. You can make money with mining, but what is it?
Yeah. So mining, aka proof of work, is just a game that people play. The Bitcoin network comes up with a number, and the game is guess the right number. And of course, the number is incredibly complex, and it takes a whole lot of computing power to come up with that right number in a decent amount of time. But if you're the node or the miner who came up with that number, then the reward is that you have the opportunity to forge the next block in the blockchain. And the reward for doing that is newly minted coins of that cryptocurrency. So for Bitcoin, you're getting Bitcoin. For Ethereum, you're getting Ether. Ethereum 2.0 is moving away from mining, but the fact remains that that's what mining is. A lot of these newer coins are moving over to something called proof of stake over proof of work because it's a lot more sustainable. Proof of work is really what is causing all of this. It is using all the electricity. When people say it's not sustainable because it uses so much electricity, it is the process of trying to figure out that number that is costing all that energy.
So that's where those arguments come from of it not being sustainable, of it using so much electricity, is from the mining process.
Yeah, all of these computers who are solely dedicated to guessing that number.
And it wasn't as big of an issue, say, 8 years ago, right? Because the difficulty of the problem that these miners have to solve increases with the higher number of miners that are in existence, right? So, like, if you were mining back in 2010, you could probably do it on your little laptop, and hey, look, I just got 25 more Bitcoin. That's cool. But like now, you're spending thousands of dollars on these specialized graphics cards that, like Chris says, is strictly set aside for mining for the next block.
And that's very true of, most cryptocurrencies that still use proof of work, aka mining, have, I forget exactly what term is called, but basically it scales with the power. So the more miners, the harder it is to guess the number, the more work, but not all cryptocurrencies have the type of mining power that Bitcoin does. So there is still, if you're really interested in doing mining, there's still money to be made, just not on Bitcoin, unless you're trying to spend a shitload of money and maybe get some venture capital and go all in with ASICs mining rigs and that sort of thing. But it's still very much feasible for somebody to just like get a couple graphics cards in their basement and start mining a cryptocurrency that, it's pretty lucrative.
And you don't need strictly. I say you don't.
Go ahead, Craig.
I say you don't need strictly like graphics cards, right? If you're like, oh, I don't want to, I just want to play around with it. I don't want to go, make this capital investment. Maybe you just want to, have some fun. There are certain coins that use algorithms that are optimized for CPUs, like what you have on your computer. Monero is one. They use their algorithm they use called Random X. So I don't need to go and buy all these like ridiculous graphics cards. I can just, if I got a spare laptop, let me configure the rig, mining rig, and I might make 50 cents a day worth of crypto or something like that. But you get to play around with it and still have fun without having to make this ridiculous investment. So
then what's the difference with staking? Like you mentioned that a little bit, Chris, but so the 2.0 of a lot of these coins is moving from mining to staking.
So Ethereum 2.0 in particular, Cardano was built to do proof of stake pretty early on. But basically the difference between proof of stake and proof of work is that at the end of the day, a person or a graphics card or whatever, someone is chosen to forge the next block, and their reward is going to be newly minted coins. The difference is, instead of the competition being guess this random number, it is, stake your coins, prove that you have a stake in this cryptocurrency. For Ethereum 2.0, I'm pretty sure it's 32 coins, which is like, I guess, $40,000, something like that right now. You put $40,000 aside, and it's like in a smart contract. So the smart contract says you cannot touch these coins for however long. And while you're staking those coins, you're basically a miner, except you're not doing the work. Like, you have the opportunity to be chosen to forge the next block. and be given the reward because of that. And so that's the difference, is basically you take all of the guessing game and all of that BS out of it, and you end up saving really all the power, because creating the next block is not computationally that hard to do compared to the actual mining.
But so when you're given, you said you're given a newly minted coin, but I thought there was a finite amount of coins. Like, is that just Bitcoin that's 21 million?
Well, it's all hard coded in the actual protocol itself. So even though you can calculate via the Bitcoin protocol how many Bitcoins there are ever going to be, you can calculate that number, but that number of Bitcoins does not exist right now. It's basically slowly released into the wild as these new coins are being minted, and then eventually it'll stop. There won't be any more Bitcoin, and it will just be the Bitcoin that already exists. But the fact that there is a number that exists that it will never go over it's scarcity. That's where scarcity comes from, and that's what gives it value to some extent. Whereas like fiat currency, there's no limit. They can just keep printing that money, and the result is that the value of that money is going to go down. And we know that for a fact. And 70 years ago, you could have bought a lot more goods with $10 than you can buy today. And, that's kind of a result of the fact that we just keep making more of it.
So, Craig, do you mine, or what would stop you from mining if you're not, I guess?
No, I don't mind. I've never really cared to set up a miner. Actually, I'm probably going to get with my buddy here, because the coin I like, QRL, is mining right now. It'll be switching over to staking late this year. But it's CPU. They use this algorithm called RandomX, which just makes it better to use a CPU instead of a graphics card. So he's like, "Oh man, yeah, help me set it up." So I've never configured a mining rig before, so it'll be a fun little experiment. We'll set it up on his computer, because where he lives, the way he has set up, is electricity and water. It's all built into the homeowners association fees. So it's a fixed, I don't know, a couple $100 a month cost. And I'm like, so can we just mine and run up the electricity, but still pay? We'll play around with it.
Yeah, there's nothing in the contract for that, huh? Hey, you can live here, but you can't mine Bitcoin.
Hey, you might be the first, though. They may put it into the contract because of you.
Yeah. There's a time period.
Anyway, I think you should try it.
Oh, we're gonna try it. We're gonna try it.
I wanted to go ahead and show this site real quick, Tyler.
Cool.
Basically, yeah, there's this site that you'll probably be interested in, Craig. It's called whattomine.com. And it's super cool. You just come in here, like you put in your GPU and how many of them you have. Let's say you have 5 1070 Ti's. And it'll basically show you what your hashing power would be for these different algorithms, and what is going to be the most lucrative coin for you to mine today. So if I have 5 1070 Ti's, my hash rate for ETH hash, which is what Ethereum uses, would be about 145 mega hashes per second. And with that, I can make about $56.09 per day. Or $47.69 relative or adjusted for power consumption. So if you live in a place where you get free power, or that it's maxed out, fucking start mining. Start abusing that, because I mean, there's still very much money to be made. Now, of course, there's overhead. A 1070 Ti, I don't remember exactly how much it is, probably $600 graphics card. And if you have 5 of them, you $3,000 for graphics cards. But at $50 a day, you're probably talking about making that back in just a couple months. So I mean, it's the type of thing where if you can get it set up, it's really not that technically intensive. If you can get it set up the first time and you have a good spot that has some pretty good airflow, you're not worried about burning your house down or anything. and you pay an okay value for electricity, mining is still very much lucrative, and your average Joe Blow can definitely still do it.
That I like that. I mean, that seems like super simple. You just use that website and type in the stuff. It'll tell you which one to mine. What is that website?
It's whattomine.com. Yep, pretty straightforward. There's probably, I don't know if you can share like a bunch of resources and links with a podcast, but we should probably there are lots of good online resources for this sort of stuff that anybody watching this is probably going to want to get a hold of.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely. I just put one of them into the comments, whattomine.com.
Oh, yeah.
Sweet. All right. So one thing I wanted to ask, once we're making so much money mining, we're making so much money investing, what does this mean for taxes? Like, what do you got to do for taxes?
Where do you live, right?
Yeah.
It depends on where you live.
Well, there are all kinds of factors, but I mean, it's not fun. But when is taxes ever fun? I would recommend getting a CPA who at least somewhat knows what they're talking about when it comes to cryptocurrencies. Yeah, I mean, regulations. The U.S. government is not a huge fan of cryptocurrencies, obviously. They have been attempting to implement some sort of control. And the best thing that they can do right now, without really understanding it, is, taxes. And so, yeah, taxes for cryptocurrencies and for trading, it's not great. But, if you're really interested in cryptocurrency, I would say, just buy and hold. You don't have to go on an exchange and trade it every day or treat it like a game, although it is pretty fun. Just buy some Bitcoin and hold it. You're not going to have to deal with too many tax considerations if you do that. But it is going to be a lot harder on your taxes if you're doing a whole lot of trading on exchanges and that sort of thing.
Yeah. I think I might have to switch around, but I believe if you buy and sell within the same calendar year, you're looking at whatever the capital gains tax rates are, which was like 25%. I can't really remember. Might be more. But if you, like Chris was saying, if you just buy and you hold and you wait, then and you sell, I think it just gets put into like you're treated as ordinary income, right? So whatever tax bracket you're in, you sell, you add that to it. If you get bumped up, ideally 3 or 4 levels, it means you made some good choices, right? But I think that's how it falls.
Yeah. At the end of the day, I mean, if you're running into those types of problems, it's probably a good problem to have,
There was one of the parts that they demand, which I think is way over the top, is the IRS wants to tax you on crypto to crypto transactions. And what that means, and it makes really doing your taxes completely a total pain in the butt, because let's say, and this happened to a lot of people with the last bubble in 2017, right? If you had some guys who, let's say you had bought your Bitcoin in 10 Bitcoin in like 10 in 2011 or something like that, and you hold, and then the bubble happens in 2017, and your coins are worth this crazy amount. You have $200,000 worth because it's 20,000. You got 10 of them, and for some reason you don't cash out to US dollars, but you say take half of that, 100 grand, and you start buying Ethereum or shit coins or whatever else you've got, right? So even though you didn't sell your Bitcoin for cash, the way that the IRS wants to treat it is essentially saying, okay, you took your Bitcoin, you sold it for US dollars, and then you bought your Ethereum, and we're going to tax you on that Bitcoin to Ethereum swap, even though you never cashed out money. And that's problematic because you had people that did that, and then 1 year later, Bitcoin was at 20,000. Now it's back down to 10 or 11, whatever it was. But you're still on the hook for that 100 grand worth of taxable transactions, and you don't have the cash, needed to pay it. So you need to actually go and sell more crypto just to pay your taxes if you have that much. It's in my opinion unfair.
It's a little ridiculous for sure. But yeah, I mean, it's just one of the, you always got to deal with your taxes, and it always sucks. So it's, there's not much good advice there other than maybe don't, if you're not really thinking about going on an exchange and doing some real trading, just buying and holding is the simplest thing to do. And it's not that bad. It's not going to be terrible on your taxes. That's probably what I would recommend.
Gotcha.
Diamond hands.
What's that?
There you go. Diamond hands, baby.
Hands.
Just hold forever.
Michael Saylor.
If you would have done that 5 years ago in any cryptocurrency, it would have been a great idea. So I'm still saying it. Just keep on holding.
Yeah, I am optimistic. I'm excited. I think it's pretty fun. I think we're in the middle of all kinds of revolutions, and this could be one of them. So you definitely want to be on the winning side of that. But
yeah.
So you mentioned something before, Chris, on like previously, not today, but about benefits of third world countries or maybe just third world populations. What's that benefit? And is it a country thing? Is there any country that could benefit from this? Because it seems like most countries, financial institutions don't want it, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's huge. And in fact, I can't believe it hasn't gotten brought up already. But yeah, I mean, think about the type of infrastructure that is required to have a full-scale payment processing system over a country. I mean, you need good internet, you need banking institutions that are trustworthy and also centralized enough to where they can all work with each other to accept everything that you're trying to transact in. You need distribute the credit cards and to have that type of infrastructure digitally in software. But you actually have to have the payment processing hardware themselves. There are so many things that are actually, you don't think too much about, but are actually hurdles for third world countries to be able to transact at that scale that easily. And your average Joe Blow, like you might be able to do that at a grocery store in a third world country, but what if you're like in a market, like, you're just trying to survive and you go to the market every day and you're selling your trinkets, like they don't have access to that. So that's one of the best things about cryptocurrencies is, the infrastructure required is really, really low. If you have some form, technically you can transact on paper, like I shit you not, but if you have some, $10 Android device, which a lot of these companies, countries, they do have access to mobile devices. I mean, they're going to be a lot cheaper, and also some very basic internet. That's really all you need. You don't even need the internet. Eventually you do to confirm the transaction, but like it just brings the amount of technical hurdles to have that type of payment processing availability way down enough to where you could get third world countries on board much easier than something a full scale payment processing system comparable to like the Visa network,
I think internet will even get ubiquitous around the world in not too long.
Right.
I think
with Starlink and with some of these different solutions, like it'll be so, the requirements will be so low. You'll be able to leave your house, go to that market on the side of the street, sell your trinkets, and be able to transact in Bitcoin pretty easily, or a cryptocurrency.
Is there anything else that we didn't cover? It comes to y'all's mind? Anything you want to talk about?
Sounds to me like Chris wants to invest in Acon coin or Acoin.
After this, y'all, I'm going all in on Doge.
I have a proposal. So right now, depending on who you like listen to and what resources, it's generally agreed on that we are in the midst of the early stages of the next Bitcoin bubble, right? So people are saying, and let's just say it happens in the next 6 to 12 months is kind of what the expected time frame is for the next all-time high in price. Uh, I want to propose a bet with Chris where we both try and guess what the next all-time high was going to be, and whoever wins, like if you win, I will happily send you $25 worth of QRL. But if I'm right, I want $25 worth of Cardano.
That's a good bet. I'm definitely in for that. And I got an answer too. I think $50,000 or the last most significant high was probably the max. I think that the long deflationary period that generally follows the bubble is probably coming really soon. And I think we're going to stabilize somewhere between $20,000 and $35,000 for a while before it happens again. So yeah, I think that max was probably already hit, but that's just me.
Okay. I'm going to go, and Tyler, you can write this down. I'm going to say, let's just say 112. 112 even.
Damn, that's optimistic. All right.
It's optimistic. It's not total moon math because you see some of these guys that are you aware of the stock to flow model on that the Twitter?
Yeah.
So he's got anywhere from like 150 to 400, but yeah, I'm going to be more realistic.
Yeah.
And I'm going to say it's driven mostly by just the increased adoption of Bitcoin by major companies, right? If you see Apple follow suit like what Tesla's done, I think
Elon,
I think that's what gets you there.
Fair enough. Yeah, that's true. And companies are starting to jump on board. So, I mean, big time investors, Chamath. I mean, we're talking big time hedge funds are doing it as well. Elon. So it's definitely true. I think that maybe there's an argument to be made that the price is somewhat more sustainable now that business is moving in. But yeah, I don't take back my number. I think that's probably somewhat accurate. Although I am rooting for you. I hope you win.
I think everybody's pretty happy with if you get around. I mean, I'm happy right now. So,
What was your number, Chris?
I think we've already hit the max before the crash. I think whatever the most recent max was, like 53,000.
I think I did see 56 or 57.
56 or 57. I think that was it for now until the next time it bumps up again, which could be a year or two.
So you're thinking, Chris, in the next couple of weeks or so, it'll go down to and stabilize around 20,000?
Yeah, kind of how, when it hit 20, we were there for not that long. It was maybe a month or less, and then we stabilized pretty good at like the 25 to 30% mark. And we were at like $5,000 to $6,000 for a while after it hit 20, and then it burst right back up, and then we hit new highs. So I'm thinking we're going to stabilize a bit. It's probably going to slowly go back down. And then I think we're going to stabilize at a price probably anywhere between 25 and 45% of its most recent high. And then before we get another one of these, that's my guess. I could be totally wrong.
Do you pay attention to those like patterns? Are you looking into like head and shoulders or like the pennant patterns? You know what I'm talking about?
I look into a lot of patterns, but mostly like traditional stock market. Not so much. I'm really not doing a lot of cryptocurrency exchange trading anymore. I'm mostly in the classic stock market. And then I do more of the long-term holds for crypto.
Cool. Yeah, some of the guys I follow that do, they analyze both the crypto market or Bitcoin specifically, and then the S&P 500 and Dow and stuff like that. it looked like Bitcoin was forming, is consolidating before another uptick. But then it also, as of late, like just more recently, is kind of like a head and shoulders where it's going to go down. So yeah, I'm not sure which way to go. Logic kind of tells me that it's primed to go way up because of all the Reddit effect that we're talking about, how everyone is losing more and more faith, and just they don't want to play the game of, the game that hasn't worked so many times.
Yeah, it's
And
true.
then
Yeah.
companies jumping in like Tesla and a lot of other guys. I don't know, that kind of makes sense to me. But all in all, I think the safest thing is, like you're saying, long-term hold. And Bitcoin has a really good future ahead of it. But,
Yeah.
yeah.
Even if you decided, even if I were right and this is the max, if you bought now and you just waited a couple of years, I guarantee you're still going to be a winner.
Mm-hmm. Even if it goes down from what it's at now, let's say 42,000, something like that,
Yeah.
down to 20, in a couple of years later, it's going to go a lot back up.
Yeah. And I'm still buying Bitcoin. So, I mean, I'm putting my money where my mouth is. I very much believe that we're still in the early days of crypto. And I still think it's a really good time to get in.
All right. Well, yeah, maybe we wrap up with some more smart practices, right? So, like, I think one thing is, you buy a little bit at a time, so then you're not just buying the peak, which of course that's the last thing you want to do. But if you buy a little bit every so often, then then you're just banking on the long term. And
I can't tell you how many times I hear I don't have the money to invest right now. It's not like traditional stocks. You don't need to buy $800 stock of Tesla. Put $5 in a week. You have $5 a week. Like I don't, whatever you feel comfortable with, but just buy a little bit and buy it often, and average out.
Craig, you got any words to keep people safe?
The risk of this happening, goes down with each passing year, but it'll still happen again. And it's keep your money off the exchanges, right? If you're not like a day trader and you're listening to what Chris is saying, and you're dollar cost averaging, so you're buying a little bit each week or every 2 weeks or something like that, make your transaction and then just take it off the exchange. And what I mean by that is, no matter what crypto you're buying, they probably have their own wallet, right? So it's either an app you can get on your phone or your desktop, or there's apps you can download, like Exodus is one where they just, although there's still some risk to that as well, but it's not on the exchange where you're not leaving your money, because until there's a phrase called "not your keys, not your crypto," which is basically saying, if you're leaving your money on Coinbase, as legit as they are, and
technically it's Coinbase's cryptocurrency, not yours.
Right. Yeah. And they just have a little ledger saying, okay, here's Craig's account and he has this much, right? So maybe something terrible happens with Coinbase. There's a security flaw. There's a hack. Who knows?
Happened before.
It's happened lots of times before. So that's a best practice. And you have a lot of good options, whether it's like a mobile wallet, kind of on the least secure things, or it's like a hardware wallet like you have with a Ledger or a Trezor, which looks like just like a little USB stick, but it's got its own PIN thing, and you could be making a transaction on the most malware infected computer out there, and it signs the transaction on the device, so you can't have it hacked.
All right. Well,
yeah, I agree with that for sure.
Look into doing that, or what are some names of that of those? Because I think we get lost in which one is the one to do that and which one doesn't accomplish that. Like Coinbase to me, kind of like, so you're telling me that Coinbase is one of the ways that you're not actually holding it, they're holding it. So what are
the idea is to basically just like keep in control of your private key. Your private key is what gives you access to the cryptocurrency that exists in your wallet. So if you're really, especially if you're long-term holding and you're not trading, you just want to like have cryptocurrency, then own it, get a hardware wallet, or there are plenty of good software wallets. You can get a paper wallet. But the hardware wallet's probably your best bet. And like Craig was saying, I think like the Ledger Nano and the Trezor are two really, really popular solutions for hardware wallets.
Perfect. All right. Anything else, guys? I know, Chris, you got an interesting project.
What's that? Unobtainium. Yeah. I just recently built a stock notification service, not like a stock market, but like product stock, because people couldn't get a hold of graphics cards and Xboxes and PlayStations. So it's called unobtainium.app. It's kind of hard to spell, so I don't know if you want to link it, Tyler, but it basically is just a stock notification service. You can subscribe to a product you want to get a hold of, like a graphics card, and it'll send you a push notification, or you can join the Discord and it'll send you a notification via there when the product is in stock, and you can hopefully get to it before the scalpers do. So just trying to screw the bots.
Yeah, Ticketmaster kind of model where they just buy in bulk and then sell it afterwards. So
it's screwing the consumer, man, but we're fighting back.
Cool. Yeah, I actually put it in the comments. So
awesome.
Yeah, people could link to that.
Cool. Thanks, man.
Or at least YouTube and Twitch, but yeah, the other ones. We'll get there. We'll put all the different resources out there for everybody. But yeah, it's I'm really glad to help promote that, Chris. I know all the projects you get involved with, and actually you're programming, you're coding, you're making those apps and those things. It's really impressive, and they're always really good projects. So happy to support that.
Thanks, man.
Craig, thank you so much for joining. And I can't thank you guys enough, except for just any way I could help you, let me know. And you're welcome back anytime. Talk about another subject.
Yeah, sure. We'll certainly be subscribing to your podcast.
Yeah.
Cool. You'll be one of the first.
Link so I can see it.
Hey, yeah. You follow me on Twitter and I'll subscribe to your podcast. And that way, it's hard when you're on the internet and you're not a girl to get more people to follow you.
Yeah, I need a sidekick or something.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Y'all be good. Thanks so much.
All right.
Thanks a lot, man.
Guys. See ya.